I'm sometimes asked to define harm reduction. What does harm reduction mean? And the best way I found to explain it is to give 4 definitions. The first definition of harm reduction is about the origins of harm reduction. It's harm reduction as needle exchange programs. It's the notion that emerged in the early 1980s when people began to realize, first in the Netherlands, in Europe, and elsewhere, that HIV was spreading not just through heterosexual and homosexual sex, but also by injecting drug users sharing their injection equipment, right? And it was the Dutch who 40 years ago said, you know what, if this is happening, yes, we want the drug users to stop, but let's just put at the drop-in centers, here's a bucket to drop your dirty needles, here's a bucket to pick up some clean needles. It was just a pragmatic intervention to try to get people living disorderly lives to basically practice harm reduction, to reduce the risk of getting and transmitting HIV. So harm reduction begins there. But harm reduction then broadens out to the second definition. And harm reduction defined as any policy or intervention that seeks to reduce the negative consequences of a risky, dangerous, or otherwise, or what some people regard as immoral activity. It's harm reduction as motorcycle helmets and as football helmets. It's harm reduction as seat belts. It's harm reduction as designated driver norms for people who get drunk but should not drive so somebody else will drive. It's harm reduction with overdose by making the antidote naloxone available, or by having Good Samaritan 911 laws so people can call emergency services if a friend overdoses without worrying about the police arresting them. It's harm reduction in all the most commonsensical, pragmatic ways. Then there's the third definition of harm reduction, and that's harm reduction as public policy. It's the one that says that the best drug policy is the one that accomplishes 2 harm reduction objectives, that seeks, on the one hand, to reduce the negative consequences of drug use, the addiction, the death, the disease, the criminality that grows out of asocial behavior, but that also tries to reduce the negative harms, the negative consequences of drug prohibitionist or unproductive drug regulatory policies. The crime, the violence, the corruption, the inefficiencies, the black markets, the violation of human rights. It's therefore the one that says the best drug policy is the one that balances 2 harm reduction objectives, reducing the harms of drugs and the harms of drug control policies. The fourth definition really falls into 2 parts, and they both have an ethical dimension. So 4A is the one that says harm reduction is about meeting the drug user where they're at. It's about meeting them, in the way in which an abstinence-only approach, if somebody who's got a problem with drugs shows up at an abstinence-only program, they're asked, are you ready to stop using drugs? Because if you say no, I can't help you. And come back another time when you're ready to stop using drugs. But it's the opposite approach when you go to a harm reduction program or a harm reduction, a helper. That person doesn't ask, are you ready to stop drugs? That person asks, what is it you want to accomplish in life? I mean, what are you trying to do? Do you want to get a legal job? Do you want to stabilize your life? Do you want to regain custody of your children? Do you want to take better care of your parents or your family? Let's focus on what you want to accomplish in life and then figure out the ways in which your drug use is getting in the way and how we can help you to manage or control your drug use, or maybe one day stop your drug use so that you can better lead the life you want to lead. It's that basic idea of not demonizing people solely because of the drug that they're using. And that leads to part 4B of the definition of harm reduction. That goes to the core principle that really drives most of us involved in drug policy reform and in harm reduction more broadly. It's the one that says nobody deserves to be punished simply for what we put in our bodies if we're not hurting anybody else. That nobody deserves to be punished or discriminated against or amongst based solely on the basis of the substance we put in our body. It's the one that says to a parent who, God forbid, has 2 children addicted to drugs, one to alcohol, let's say, or nicotine, and the other one to heroin or to cocaine or methamphetamine. It's the one that says there is no legitimate basis in science, in medicine, in the Bible, even in any ethical code, for discriminating in the way we treat those two children. And saying that because this first child has an addiction to alcohol and the second one has an addiction to cocaine, that one will not suffer any criminal consequences, unless they get behind the wheel of a car and run somebody over, unless they commit a crime. Whereas that person addicted to the illicit substance can be sanctioned, arrested, lose their freedom, their job, even if they never hurt a soul. So that big definition of harm reduction, that ethical one, that's the one that ultimately drives me. But I'll say that in my advocacy, I almost never start off by pointing to that principle, because most people don't get it at first, or they don't agree with it at first. I argue all the other policy arguments and the public health arguments and the economic arguments and all of those, and only in the end do I bring in the core ethical argument, the core argument grounded in respect for our own sovereignty, our own control of our own minds and bodies, that core human rights, civil libertarian principle.
Desde mi punto de vista, lo que no le puede faltar a un activista es paciencia, compromiso y fuerza. Estos procesos son extremadamente largos y durante mucho tiempo uno no ve resultados. Pero es ahí donde es importante el compromiso, entender que la reducción de daños puede salvar vidas. Y después de años de estar trabajando, uno empieza a ver cómo las políticas públicas de los gobiernos, las políticas públicas al momento de legislar, van cambiando. No creo que exista hoy día una diferencia entre el Ignacio activista y el Ignacio persona. Y no existe esa diferencia porque creo que le pasa a muchos activistas en que por una causa hemos dejado tanto de nuestra vida a un lado que creo que el Ignacio activista se ha comido un poco al Ignacio persona. Hay gente que no entiende el tiempo dedicado, los momentos perdidos. Es algo muy grande, pero eso también hace que uno se pierda muchas cosas. Cosas que se me vienen rápido a la mente. Hace un par de años yo estaba en Perú luchando por crear la Asociación Peruana mientras mi mujer estaba de cumpleaños. Y hoy día estoy acá en Colombia tratando de aportar al activismo mientras yo estoy de cumpleaños. No hay una diferencia porque es tanto lo que dejamos en el activismo que se pierde un poco la persona.
Creo que mi mujer se merece una estatua, porque tiene muchísima paciencia conmigo. Yo, casado conmigo mismo, acabaría a puñetazos, posiblemente. Esto te absorbe mucho, es lo que decía antes. Yo tengo el vapeo 24/7 en la cabeza y si de algo me arrepiento en todos estos años es de que quizá he descuidado algunas cosas en mi vida personal, y si volviera a rehacer el camino, esos errores al menos procuraría no volver a cometerlos. Bueno, la meta es que dejen de atacarnos, que dejen de tratarnos como apestados, de criminalizarnos, y que se reconozca la evidencia científica que ya tenemos, que se vea esto como una alternativa real a lo que yo he dicho muchas veces, una solución a lo que es posiblemente la mayor epidemia del último siglo, que es el tabaquismo. Y esto llega para ofrecer esa solución.
I find it very frustrating, the climate that we're in, where all the evidence, we can all see that the evidence is showing that vaping helps make us to quit. That vaping is not creating an epidemic amongst youth. That vaping does not lead to smoking. That flavours are essential. That nicotine is not evil. But we are still surrounded by this media rubbish, and there's also a highly dangerous group of people who seem to be motivated by an ideology that is set on telling other people what to do, on making people fit within their utopian worldview, which to me it's grossly unfair, and it's causing death. There's no other spin. I mean, it is. People will die if they don't have the truth. I think I suppose my goal is to try and change that. And there's a wonderful now global community of tobacco harm reductionists who are working together with passion and enthusiasm, and I love being part of that community. It's coming from our hearts, it's coming from our own experiences. That's something that the people that don't like tobacco harm reduction don't have. I mean, that's why, even though they have all the resources, consumers in tobacco harm reduction have no resources. But I think we're going to be more successful because we're authentic. It's our lives. We know it's our lives. We know that our lives have been changed for the better. We know that other people's lives will be changed for the better if they're given the chance. And that's what drives us.